The manager didn't just hit her. He slammed the new waitress against the bar, so hard the entire room froze, until the Mafia boss stood up from the shadows. He didn't shout. He didn't rush. He just walked slow, controlled, lethal, leaving everyone wondering which bone he'd break first. But when the truth about why he stepped in surfaces, everything detonates. If you're hooked in and want to enjoy this story, go ahead and subscribe, and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. It's always amazing to see where everyone's watching. Plus, tomorrow I've got another incredible story lined up, and you definitely don't want to miss it. Alright, back to the story. The Crossroads Tavern smelled like every bad decision made after midnight spilled bourbon, fried grease, and the particular desperation of men drinking to forget things they'd never actually done. It was the kind of place where violence simmered just beneath the surface, waiting for an excuse. And on this particular Friday night, Linda Anderson was about to become that excuse. The bar occupied a forgotten corner 3 blocks from the warehouse district, where flickering neon beer signs fought a losing battle against the grime-streaked windows. Inside, the Friday night crowd had settled into their usual rhythm dock workers nursing their third round, college kids pretending the fake IDs in their wallets made them adults, regulars who'd claimed the same cracked vinyl stools for decades. Linda moved through the chaos like she was trying to disappear into it. She wore simple black pants and the burgundy polo shirt that marked her as staff, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She looked exactly like what she was supposed to be, a new waitress. 26, soft-spoken. The kind of person customers forgot the moment their drinks arrived. Her hands trembled slightly as she balanced another tray, but she'd gotten good at hiding it. This was her first week, her first real job in 8 months. She needed it to work. In the far corner, past the pool table where 2 men argued over a scratch, Garrett Naranjo watched her with the focused attention of a predator tracking prey. He sat alone at a corner table with clear sightlines to both entrances. His black suit was tailored precisely enough to be expensive but not flashy. The top 2 buttons of his shirt were undone, revealing the edge of a tattoo that crept up from his collarbone, dark ink against olive skin. His whiskey sat untouched, ice melting in slow circles. He wasn't there for the whiskey. His dark eyes tracked Linda's movements with an intensity that would have unnerved her if she'd noticed. The way she flinched when customers raised their voices, the practiced efficiency with which she avoided the handsy regular in booth 7. The brief moment of stillness when she thought no one was looking, her shoulders dropping with exhaustion before she straightened again. Garrett saw more than a struggling waitress. He saw someone who understood exits, who calculated distances, who'd learned to read danger the way most people read street signs. He saw something else too, something that nagged at the edges of his memory, the slope of her shoulders, the way she tilted her head when listening, the small scar above her left eyebrow. He knew her. Or he had known her, years ago, in a different life, before the empire, before the blood. When he'd been younger, cornered, bleeding in an alley, and a stranger had pulled him out of the dark. She'd forgotten him. He'd never forgotten her. Then the tray slipped. It happened fast. A customer shifted as Linda reached across to clear glasses. 4 pint glasses, 2 rocks glasses, and a basket of wing bones hit the floor in an explosion of sound that cut through the bar's noise like a gunshot. Conversations faltered. Heads turned. Eyes found Linda, frozen in the spreading pool of beer and glass shards, her face flushed with embarrassment and something deeper fear. James Jackson emerged from behind the bar like a storm rolling in. The manager was in his late 50s, with iron-gray hair slicked back from a face that had settled into permanent anger. He was thick through the chest and shoulders, his polo shirt stretched tight across his gut, sweat stains dark under his arms. His face was already red, flushed with rage that had been waiting for an outlet all night. "You stupid bitch," his voice carried over the music, silencing tables and expanding waves. "That's coming out of your paycheck, all of it." Linda's mouth opened, an apology forming, but James was already moving. He crossed the distance in 3 heavy steps, his hand shooting out to grab a fistful of her dark hair. Linda's eyes went wide, her hands coming up instinctively, but James yanked her forward, off balance. "I said this was your last warning." He slammed her head first toward the bar counter with brutal force. Her forehead connected with polished wood in a sick crack that made the birthday party finally go quiet. A glass beside her shattered from impact. Linda gasped, half sob, half scream, her hands scrabbling against the counter as James kept her pinned. His fist twisted in her hair. "Clean this shit up," he hissed into her ear, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "And if you drop one more fucking thing, you're fired." Somewhere in the back, someone laughed, nervous, performative. Someone else pulled out a phone. Nobody moved to help. Except Garrett. He rose from his seat with slow, deliberate movement. His chair didn't scrape. He didn't rush. He simply stood, buttoned his suit jacket with one hand, and began walking. His expression hadn't changed, still neutral, still calm, but something had shifted in the air around him. The two men at the pool table moved aside without being asked. A woman heading toward the bathroom changed direction mid-step. Garrett's jaw was tight. His eyes had gone flat and dark. His stride was measured, controlled, predatory. James Jackson, still holding Linda against the counter, didn't see him coming. He didn't realize he'd just laid hands on the one woman the Mafia boss would burn the city for. The bar held its breath. Garrett reached them before the bartender could move, before the drunk with the phone could hit record, before Linda's next ragged breath. His hand closed around James's wrist with surgical precision, not a grab, a trap, the kind of grip that cut off blood flow and sent warning signals screaming up nerve endings. "Let go." His voice was soft, almost conversational, the kind of quiet that made people lean in to hear better. But there was something underneath it, something cold and ancient and absolutely certain. James's head whipped around, his face still flushed with righteous anger. "The hell are you? Get your hands off me before I—" He stopped. Something in Garrett's eyes cut the words off at the root. They were dark, flat, empty of anything resembling mercy. James had seen men angry before, had seen men violent before. This was different. This was a man deciding, with clinical detachment, exactly how much pain to inflict before the lesson stuck. "I won't ask twice." Garrett's grip tightened fractionally. James felt something in his wrist, shift, grind. A warning of what could snap if he pushed further. "She dropped a whole tray, man. She's my employee, I can handle." Garrett moved. One moment James had Linda pinned against the counter. The next, Garrett had twisted his arm with brutal efficiency, using James's own momentum to send him stumbling backward. James's hand released Linda's hair reflexively, his body following the direction Garrett had chosen for it. He crashed into the shelf behind the bar. Bottles exploded in a cascade of glass and liquor, top-shelf whiskey, vodka, premium tequila, hundreds of dollars worth of inventory painting the floor in amber and crystal shards. James landed hard on his side, gasping, his wrist still screaming from where Garrett had controlled him like a puppet on strings. The bar went absolutely silent. Even the jukebox seemed to hesitate between songs, leaving only the sound of dripping alcohol and James's labored breathing. Garrett didn't advance. Didn't need to. He simply stood there, buttoning his suit jacket again with the same calm precision, his eyes never leaving James's face. "If you touch her again," Garrett said, his voice still soft, still controlled, "I'll break every bone in your hand. One at a time, starting with the small ones, so you have time to understand what's happening." It wasn't a threat. Threats implied negotiation, implied uncertainty. This was a statement of fact, delivered with the same certainty as a weather forecast. James scrambled to his feet, glass crunching under his shoes, his face cycling through shock, humiliation, and finally settling on impotent rage. "Do you know who the fuck I don't care." Garrett cut him off. "You're nothing. You were nothing 5 seconds ago, and you're somehow less now. Leave. This is my bar, you son of a—" Two men appeared from the crowd, regulars James had served 1,000 times, men who'd laughed at his jokes and tipped well. But now they were moving toward him with the same cold purpose Garrett radiated, and James realized with sinking clarity that whatever authority he'd thought he had was gone. They grabbed him under the arms and hauled him toward the door. "You're dead!" James screamed over his shoulder, thrashing uselessly in their grip. "You hear me? You're fucking dead. I got friends, I got protection. You picked the wrong—" The door slammed shut, cutting off his threats mid-sentence. The bar remained frozen for another heartbeat. Then, like someone had pressed play on a paused movie, conversations resumed. Quieter now, more cautious. But the rhythm returning. The bartender grabbed a mop. Someone changed the jukebox song. The birthday party ordered another round. Everyone pretending they hadn't just watched their boss get dismantled like a broken toy. Linda hadn't moved. She stood exactly where James had left her, one hand pressed against her forehead where a thin line of blood traced down toward her eyebrow. Her breathing was shallow, rapid, the kind of breathing that preceded either tears or screaming. Her dark eyes were wide, glassy with shock. Garrett turned to her, and his entire demeanor shifted. The predator vanished. His expression softened into something almost gentle, his movements careful as he approached, giving her space, letting her see him coming, not crowding her the way James had. "Are you hurt?" He pulled a handkerchief from his pocket, actual cloth, monogrammed, absurdly formal for a dive bar. He offered it to her but didn't try to touch her. "You're bleeding." Linda took the handkerchief with trembling fingers, pressed it against her forehead. The white fabric bloomed red immediately. I'm fine. I didn't mean to. The tray just... I know." His voice was different now, warm, reassuring. Nothing like the cold instrument he'd used on James. "You didn't do anything wrong. He's going to fire me." The words came out broken, desperate. "I need this job. I can't. I just got here. I can't lose this already." "He won't fire you. You don't know him. He holds grudges. He won't." Garrett said it with the same absolute certainty he'd used on James. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a business card, heavy stock, minimal design, just a name and number. He pressed it into her hand. "If he comes back, if anyone bothers you, call me." Linda stared at the card, then at him, trying to reconcile the violence she'd just witnessed with the concern in his eyes. "Why?" she whispered. Garrett looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable flickering across his face. Because someone should have stopped him the first time he did this. He turned and walked toward the exit, leaving Linda holding his handkerchief and his card, her heart hammering against her ribs, wondering who the hell she'd just met. Linda's hands were still shaking when she pushed open the door to her apartment 3 hours later. The shift had continued. Someone had to clean up the glass, someone had to finish the orders, and the assistant manager who'd arrived 20 minutes after James's exit made it clear that walking out wasn't an option. So Linda had worked through the tremors, through the throbbing in her forehead, through the stares and whispers that followed her from table to table. "Did you see what that guy did to Jackson? Who the hell was he? She must be sleeping with him or something. Jackson's gonna lose his mind when he comes back." She'd kept her head down, smiled when required, and counted down the minutes until closing. Now, finally alone, the adrenaline that had kept her upright drained away all at once. Her apartment was a studio on the 4th floor of a building that had been charming in the 1970s, and was now just old. Exposed brick that leaked cold in winter. A kitchenette with 2 working burners. A bathroom where the shower pressure changed based on what the neighbors were doing. But it was hers, sort of. The lease was under a name that wasn't quite Linda Anderson, signed with references that wouldn't survive a deep background check. It was supposed to be temporary. Everything was supposed to be temporary. She locked the door, deadbolt chain, the chair wedged under the handle the way she'd learned from a YouTube video at 2 in the morning during her first week here. Only then did she let herself breathe. The business card sat on her palm like a loaded gun. Garrett Naranjo. Nothing else. No company name, no title, just a phone number embossed in black on cream stock so thick it felt like cloth. The kind of card that cost more than her weekly groceries. She set it on the counter and stared at it while the ancient refrigerator hummed and the upstairs neighbor's music bled through the ceiling. Why? That's what she'd asked him. Why did he help her? Why did he destroy James Jackson for a stranger? A nobody waitress who'd dropped a tray and deserved whatever her boss decided she deserved, because someone should have stopped him the first time he did this. Linda walked to the bathroom and examined her reflection in the mirror above the sink. The cut on her forehead had stopped bleeding, sealed itself with a dark scab that would leave a mark for days. Purple bruising was already forming around it, spreading toward her temple. Her eyes looked hollow, exhausted, older than 26. She looked like someone who'd been running for 8 months and hadn't stopped long enough to realize she was tired. The handkerchief sat folded on the edge of the sink, white cloth stained rust red, monogrammed with elegant letters, GN. She should wash it, return it. That would be the normal thing to do, the polite thing. Except nothing about tonight had been normal. And Garrett Naranjo hadn't seemed like the kind of man who cared about handkerchiefs. He'd seemed like the kind of man who broke people. Efficiently, calmly, without a second thought. Linda turned away from the mirror and walked to the window, peeling back the curtain just enough to scan the street below. Empty. No unfamiliar cars. No figures lingering in doorways. No one watching. She'd been careful. So careful. New city. New name. New job. New life assembled from pieces that couldn't be traced back to who she'd been before. She'd deleted social media, ditched her phone, paid for everything in cash until she'd built enough of a paper trail under her new identity to open a bank account. 8 months of looking over her shoulder. 8 months of flinching at sudden movements and sleeping with her shoes by the bed. 8 months of telling herself that eventually she'd feel safe again. And then tonight, Garrett Naranjo had looked at her like he knew her. Not the fake her, the waitress with the temporary life. The real her, The one she'd buried under lies and distance and sheer force of will. That's impossible, she told herself, letting the curtain fall back into place. You're paranoid. He was just being decent. Some people are just decent. Except decent people didn't move the way he'd moved. Didn't speak with that kind of certainty. Didn't make grown men scatter with a glance. Decent people didn't have that much control over violence. Linda returned to the kitchenette and picked up the business card again. She should throw it away. Forget tonight ever happened. Show up for her next shift. Apologize to whoever was managing. Keep her head down and her mouth shut. That was the smart play. The safe play. Instead, she found herself thinking about the moment Garrett had turned to her after James was gone. The way his entire demeanor had shifted predator to protector in the space of a heartbeat. The genuine concern in his eyes when he'd asked if she was hurt. The way he'd offered her the handkerchief, but hadn't tried to touch her. Respecting her space even as he invaded everyone else's. If anyone bothers you, call me. Linda slipped the card into her wallet, next to the fake ID and the debit card under her borrowed name. She wouldn't call him. Of course she wouldn't. But having the option felt like the first real safety net she'd had in 8 months. Outside, a car alarm went off 3 blocks away. Linda flinched, then forced herself to breathe through it. Just a car alarm, just city noise. Nothing to do with her. She crawled into bed, fully clothed, too exhausted to change, and stared at the ceiling until her eyes finally closed. She dreamed of a man in a black suit, standing between her and something dark she couldn't quite see. His voice soft and certain. I won't ask twice. Linda woke to sunlight knifing through the gap in her curtains and the taste of copper in her mouth. For 3 disoriented seconds, she didn't know where she was. The ceiling was wrong. The light was wrong. The sounds filtering up from the street were... Memory crashed back. The bar, the tray, James's hand in her hair, the crack of her skull against polished wood. Garrett Naranjo. She sat up too quickly, her head pounding in protest. The bruise on her forehead had deepened overnight, purple spreading into yellow at the edges, the cut dark and angry. She looked like she'd been in a fight. She had been in a fight. She just hadn't been the one throwing punches. Her phone showed 11:47 a.m. She'd slept through her alarm, through the morning, through the part of the day when she usually convinced herself that everything was fine, that she was safe, that the past couldn't find her here. 3 missed calls, all from the Crossroads Tavern. Linda stared at the notifications, her stomach twisting. James. It had to be James, calling to fire her, or worse, calling to make sure she understood what happened when employees embarrassed him in front of customers. She should call back. She needed this job. She needed a job. Any job that paid cash and didn't ask too many questions. But her finger hovered over the callback button and wouldn't complete the motion. Because someone should have stopped him the first time he did this. The first time. Not the only time. Garrett had known, somehow, that James Jackson was the kind of man who'd done this before, who would do it again, who fed on the powerlessness of people who couldn't fight back. Linda had known men like that. She'd run from a man like that. The thought arrived unbidden, unwelcome, dragging 8 months of carefully constructed denial behind it. She stood and walked to the closet, to the cardboard box shoved in the back corner beneath winter clothes she'd never wear in this climate. Her hands were steady as she pulled it out, steadier than they'd been last night. Inside, a flip phone she'd never activated, $300 in small bills, a birth certificate for someone named Emma Richardson, and a photograph she should have burned months ago. The picture was creased, faded, taken on someone's phone and printed on cheap paper. It showed a younger version of Linda, or whatever her name had been, then standing next to a man in an expensive suit. Her smile was tight, performative. His hand rested on her lower back with the possessive casualness of ownership. Daniel Cortez, real estate developer, philanthropist, city council member with aspirations for higher office. Charming, connected, dangerous in ways that didn't show up until you were too deep to escape easily. She'd been 23 when they met, 24 when she realized the controlling behavior wasn't love, 25 when she understood that leaving him would require more than just walking out the door, 26 when she finally did it anyway. 8 months ago, she'd emptied her bank account, left her phone on a park bench 3 states away, and disappeared into the kind of anonymous poverty that made people invisible. She'd picked a new city at random, a new name from a list she'd memorized, a new life assembled from thrift store clothes and cash-only transactions. She'd been so careful. No social media, no contact with anyone from before, no mistakes. And yet last night, Garrett Naranjo had looked at her with recognition flickering in his dark eyes. That's impossible, Linda told herself again, shoving the photograph back into the box. "You're seeing ghosts." He didn't recognize you. He couldn't. Except the way he'd moved, precise, controlled, devastating, reminded her of the men who'd worked for Daniel. Security, he'd called them. Muscle, everyone else called them. Men who solved problems with violence and made those problems disappear. Garrett Naranjo had that same energy, that same casual relationship with brutality, which meant he was either someone from that world or someone who operated in parallel to it. Either way, he was dangerous. Linda's phone buzzed. Another call from the tavern. This time she answered. "Hello? Linda?" A woman's voice, not James, the assistant manager who'd covered the end of her shift. "Hey, just calling to check on you. You okay?" The kindness in her tone was unexpected enough that Linda's throat tightened. Yeah, I'm fine. Listen, about last night, Jackson's not coming back. Owner finally had enough. Fired him this morning. Apparently last night wasn't the first time he put his hands on staff. A pause. You should file a police report. Get it on record. I can't. I get it. But the job's still yours if you want it. Tom's managing now, he's good people. We could use you tonight if you're up for it. Linda looked at the box, at the photograph of Daniel's hand on her back, at the evidence of a life she couldn't fully leave behind. "I'll be there," she heard herself say. She ended the call and stood in the middle of her small apartment, surrounded by the debris of who she'd been and who she was pretending to be. "If anyone bothers you, call me." Garrett's card sat in her wallet like a promise or a threat, she couldn't decide which. 3 miles across the city, in an office that overlooked the warehouse district, Garrett Naranjo stared at a photograph on his desk. 10 years old. Crumpled. Stained with blood that had long since dried to rust. A young woman, barely more than a girl, helping a bleeding stranger to his feet in an alley, her face creased with concern. Linda Anderson didn't remember saving his life, but Garrett remembered everything. James Jackson's wrist throbbed as he sat in the back booth of Murphy's bar, 15 blocks from the Crossroads Tavern and a lifetime away from the humiliation that still burned through his veins. Fired. After 12 years of running that shithole, of covering for the owner's incompetence, of managing drunks and entitled college brats and staff who couldn't follow simple instructions, fired. Because some suit with a god complex had decided to play hero for a clumsy waitress who couldn't hold a tray. The ice in his whiskey had melted 20 minutes ago, but James kept drinking it anyway, each swallow stoking the rage that had been building since 2 bouncers. His bouncers, men he'd hired, dragged him out like common trash. "You're nothing." Garrett Naranjo's words echoed in his skull with the persistence of tinnitus. "You were nothing 5 seconds ago, and you're somehow less now." James's hand tightened around his glass hard enough to make it creak. His other hand, the one Naranjo had nearly broken, rested on the table, the wrist swollen and mottled purple. He should have gone to the ER. Instead, he'd come here, to Murphy's, to the one place where people still treated him with the respect he deserved. Or at least, they used to. Now, even the bartender looked at him differently, like he'd heard something, like the story had already spread through the network of dive bars and late-night establishments where reputation was currency. James Jackson got put down by some guy in a suit. Didn't even fight back. Just let himself get thrown into a shelf like a bitch. "Rough night?" The voice came from behind him, smooth, amused, familiar enough to make James's shoulders tense. Victor Kane slid into the booth across from him, without waiting for an invitation. He was in his 40s, lean and sharp-featured, dressed in the kind of deliberately casual clothes that cost more than they looked. His dark hair was touched with silver at the temples, his smile friendly in the way that snakes were friendly right before they struck. James had met him 6 months ago through mutual acquaintances, the kind of acquaintances who operated in the gray spaces between legal, business, and outright crime. Victor had made it clear he had connections, resources, protection for people smart enough to align themselves properly. "I'm fine," James muttered, not meeting Victor's eyes. "That's not what I heard." Victor signaled the bartender for 2 drinks. "I heard you had a disagreement with someone at your establishment. Someone who didn't appreciate your management style." James's jaw clenched. Some asshole stuck his nose where it didn't belong. "It's handled." "Handled." Victor's smile widened. "Is that why you're here instead of at the Crossroads? Is that why your hand looks like you lost a fight with a car door?" The bartender delivered their drinks, top-shelf whiskey, that James definitely hadn't ordered. Victor raised his glass in mock salute before taking a sip. "The man who put you on your ass," Victor said, his tone conversational, almost friendly. Tall, dark hair, expensive suit. Had a tattoo on his neck. Moved like he'd done this before. "Sound familiar?" James stared at him. "You know him?" Garrett Naranjo. Victor said the name the way other people said cancer or plague. And you, my friend, just stepped into something much bigger than a workplace dispute. I don't give a shit who he is. He assaulted me. I got rights. Victor laughed. Actually laughed, the sound sharp and genuinely amused. Rights. James, you beautiful idiot. Garrett Naranjo doesn't care about your rights. He runs half the illegal operations in this city. Protection, smuggling, enforcement. The kind of man the police don't investigate because they value their pensions and their kneecaps. The words landed like punches. James felt something cold settle in his stomach. Then why would he? He trailed off. Memory providing the answer. The waitress. Linda Anderson, with her nervous hands and her carefully blank expression. He's protecting her. The girl I fired. Not fired. Disciplined. Victor leaned forward, his smile fading into something more serious. Tell me exactly what happened. James recounted it, the dropped tray, the lecture, the grab. He left out the part where he'd slammed her head into the counter, left out the blood and the trembling and the phone cameras, but Victor's expression said he knew anyway. He showed up at your bar specifically, Victor said when James finished. Sat in the corner, watched her, waited, then intervened the moment you touched her. So what? So that's not random, James. Garrett Naranjo doesn't go to dive bars to relax. He went there for her, which means she's either someone he knows, someone he wants, or someone he's been looking for. Victor paused. Any of those scenarios make you valuable. Valuable how? To the people who've been trying to get leverage on Naranjo for years. Victor pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. He's untouchable most of the time. No family, no weaknesses, no one close enough to use against him. But if this girl matters to him, understanding dawned slowly, mixing with the whiskey and the humiliation to create something dark and vindictive in James's chest. You want me to help you get to her. I want you to help us understand what makes her special. Victor's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, smiled. And in return, we make sure Garrett Naranjo understands what happens when he humiliates people under our protection. I'm under your protection? You are now. Victor stood, left a $100 bill on the table. Someone will contact you tomorrow. In the meantime, stay away from the crossroads. Stay away from the girl. And for God's sake, ice that wrist. He walked out, leaving James alone with the expensive whiskey and a new reality. Garrett Naranjo had made an enemy tonight, but James Jackson had just found allies powerful enough to make the Mafia boss bleed. Linda's second shift at the Crossroads Tavern felt like walking through a crime scene where the body hadn't been removed yet. The shelf James had crashed into was still bare, the replacement bottles not yet delivered. Faint stains marked the floor where liquor had pooled and been hastily mopped. The regulars who'd witnessed Friday night's explosion kept glancing at her, some with sympathy, others with the uncomfortable awareness of people who'd watched violence and done nothing. Tom, the new manager, was exactly what the assistant manager had promised. Competent, professional, utterly uninterested in drama. He'd checked on her twice during her shift, asked if she needed anything, and otherwise left her alone to work. It should have felt like relief. Instead, Linda couldn't shake the crawling sensation between her shoulder blades, the persistent feeling of being watched. She'd felt it on the walk to work, that prickling awareness that made her check reflections in storefront windows and cross the street twice to see if anyone followed. She'd felt it in the break room while tying her apron. And now, 3 hours into her shift, it hadn't faded. You're paranoid, she told herself, delivering drinks to a table of college students who barely looked up from their phones. 8 months of running will do that. You're safe. James is gone. Everything's fine. But her instincts, honed by months of looking over her shoulder, screamed otherwise. She was clearing glasses from the bar when she noticed the filing cabinet in Tom's office, visible through the half-open door. Her personnel file would be in there. Her application, her fake references, the carefully constructed identity she'd built from borrowed credentials and small lies. I should check it, she thought suddenly. Make sure everything's still in order. The impulse was irrational, obsessive, the kind of thinking that led to mistakes, but it burrowed into her mind and wouldn't let go. During her break, while Tom was handling a delivery out back, Linda slipped into the office. The filing cabinet wasn't locked. Why would it be? This was a dive bar, not a bank. She found her file quickly, pulled it out, and opened it on the desk. Everything looked normal at first. Her application, signed and dated, the reference letters she'd fabricated, her tax forms under the name Linda Anderson. Then she saw the sticky note attached to the inside of the folder. Hired per V. Kane's recommendation 6 months ago. Linda's hands went numb. 6 months ago. Before she'd even arrived in this city. before she'd walked through the door looking for work, before she'd existed as Linda Anderson anywhere except in her own carefully constructed fiction. Someone had placed her here. Someone had created this job, this opportunity, this entire scenario before she'd even known she needed it. The room tilted. Linda gripped the edge of the desk, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps that tasted like panic. Kane. She didn't know the name, didn't recognize it. But someone with that name had arranged her employment at the Crossroads Tavern half a year before she'd applied, which meant someone had been tracking her, planning for her, waiting for her to run exactly where they'd predicted she would run. The door opened behind her. Linda spun, the file clutched against her chest, her heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. Tom stood in the doorway, his expression shifting from surprise to concern. "Linda, you okay? You look like you're gonna pass out." Her voice cracked. She forced words through the panic. "My file. I just wanted to check. I thought maybe there was a mistake with my tax forms." Tom glanced at the folder, then at her face, pale, shaking, clearly lying. But instead of anger, his expression softened into something like pity. "Hey, it's okay. Take a minute. You've had a hell of a weekend." He stepped aside, gesturing to the hallway. "Go splash some water on your face. I'll cover your tables." Linda nodded, unable to speak, and walked past him on legs that felt like water. In the bathroom, she locked herself in a stall and tried to breathe through the terror clawing up her throat. "Someone placed you here. Someone's been watching. Someone knew you'd run, knew where you'd go, knew exactly how to set the trap. Daniel. It had to be Daniel. He'd found her, tracked her, engineered this entire situation. The job, the bar, maybe even James's attack. No, that didn't make sense. Daniel was controlling, possessive, dangerous, but he wasn't Mafia. He wasn't the kind of man who orchestrated elaborate scenarios. He was direct, blunt, the kind of power that came from money and connections and lawyers who made problems disappear, which meant someone else was pulling strings. Someone who'd wanted her in that bar the night Garrett Naranjo walked in. Linda's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out with trembling hands. Unknown number. She should ignore it. Should delete it. She answered. "Linda Anderson." The voice was male, smooth, unfamiliar. "Or should I call you by your real name? We need to talk about your employment situation, and about the man who's been watching you." "Who is this?" "A friend. Someone who can explain why you were hired 6 months before you applied, why James Jackson was told to push you until you broke, why Garrett Naranjo was in that bar Friday night." A pause. "He knows who you are. He's known from the beginning. And if you don't want to end up as collateral damage in a war you don't understand, you'll meet me. Tonight. Alone." The line went dead. Linda stood in the bathroom stall, the phone still pressed to her ear, her reflection fractured in the graffiti-covered mirror. Outside, her tables were waiting. Inside, everything she'd built was falling apart. And somewhere in the city, Garrett Naranjo's phone was ringing with a message from one of his men. Someone just contacted the girl. They know. James Jackson had been hiding in a motel on the edge of the city for 3 days when Garrett Naranjo's men found him. The Starlight Motor Inn was the kind of place that rented rooms by the hour and didn't ask questions as long as cash appeared on the counter. James had paid for a week up front, kept the curtains drawn, and ordered takeout that he barely touched. His wrist had swollen to twice its normal size. The bruising spread up his forearm in purple and yellow waves. He'd ignored calls from Victor Kane, ignored the texts that grew progressively less friendly. Because somewhere between the expensive whiskey and the cold morning light, James had realized what being under protection actually meant. It meant being useful. And once you stopped being useful, protection evaporated like morning fog. He was eating cold pizza directly from the box when the door to his room opened. Not kicked in, not forced, just opened, the lock picked with professional efficiency, and suddenly 3 men were inside before James could reach for the baseball bat he'd bought at a gas station. 2 of them were muscle, broad-shouldered, dead-eyed, wearing the kind of casual clothes that hid weapons efficiently. The third was older, gray-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost more than James's car. James Jackson. The older man's voice was calm, almost bored. "Mr. Naranjo would like a word." James's bladder threatened to let go. "I didn't do anything. I haven't talked to anyone. I've been here the whole time." "We know." The man gestured to the door. "Let's go. You can walk, or we can carry you. Your choice." 20 minutes later, James sat in the back office of a restaurant that had been closed for renovations for 6 months. The dining room beyond the door was dark, empty. The chairs stacked on tables like a graveyard of normalcy. Garrett Naranjo sat across from him, perfectly still, his suit immaculate despite the late hour. The tattoo on his neck seemed darker in the dim light, more menacing. His hands were folded on the table between them, no weapons visible, no overt threat. He didn't need weapons. His presence was threat enough. "You've been difficult to reach," Garrett said quietly. "I needed time to think." James's voice shook despite his attempts to control it. "Figure out my next move." "Your next move was already decided for you." Garrett leaned forward slightly. "Victor Kane. You met with him 3 days ago at Murphy's bar. He offered you protection in exchange for information about Linda Anderson. What did you tell him?" James's mouth went dry. "Nothing. I didn't tell him anything because I don't know anything. She's just a waitress. She worked there a week. I don't know why you care about her. But Victor does. It wasn't a question. He knows something about her that made her valuable. Valuable enough to plan for. What did he say to you?" "James? He said you don't go to bars like the Crossroads for fun. He said you were there for her specifically. That she mattered to you." The words tumbled out faster now. Self-preservation overriding loyalty to people who'd already abandoned him. He said people have been trying to get leverage on you for years, and if she's your weakness. Garrett's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air, a subtle tightening, like a predator catching a scent. "What else?" he said. James swallowed hard. "He said she wasn't hired randomly. That someone placed her at the Crossroads 6 months ago, before she even applied." He laughed about it, like it was all planned. Silence. Garrett's dark eyes studied James with the clinical detachment of a surgeon deciding where to cut. "Did Victor tell you who placed her there?" "No. But he knew about the sticky note in her file, the one that said she was hired on his recommendation." James's voice dropped to a whisper. "He's been watching her. Watching both of you. I think Friday night wasn't an accident. I think he wanted me to go after her. Wanted you to intervene. To expose my interest in her." Garrett's voice was soft, deadly. "To confirm what he suspected. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I swear to God, I didn't know any of this when you grabbed her by the hair and slammed her head into a counter." Garrett's tone didn't rise. Didn't sharpen. Somehow that made it worse. "When you terrorized a woman who was just trying to survive. She dropped a tray. You were just being exactly what Victor needed you to be. Cruel enough, stupid enough, predictable enough." Garrett stood, buttoning his jacket with careful precision. "He knew I'd intervene. Knew I couldn't watch someone hurt her without acting. He used you as bait, James, and you took it because you enjoy hurting people weaker than you." James's hands were shaking violently now. "What are you going to do to me?" Garrett looked at him for a long moment, and James saw his death in those dark eyes, not a question of if, but when. "You're going to tell me everything Victor Kane said. Every word, every detail, every instruction he gave you. And then you're going to call him and tell him exactly what I tell you to say. And if I don't? Then the body they find in 3 days won't have enough teeth left for a dental ID." Garrett's voice remained perfectly calm. "Choose quickly, James. My patience has limits, and you exhausted most of it Friday night." James chose survival. He told Garrett everything. Linda didn't go to the meeting. Instead, she called the number on the business card she'd been carrying for 3 days. Garrett answered on the second ring. "Linda." Not a question. He'd known it was her before picking up. Had probably been waiting for this call since the moment his men reported someone had contacted her. "Someone knows." Her voice was steadier than she expected, standing in the alley behind the Crossroads with her coat pulled tight against the November wind. "About me. About you. About everything. I know. Where are you?" "The bar. But I'm supposed to meet someone in 20 minutes. Anonymous call. They said they could explain why I was hired before I applied. Why James attacked me. Why you were there." She paused. "They said you've known who I am from the beginning." Silence on the other end, not empty, but weighted. The kind of silence that confirmed what she'd been afraid to believe. "It's true, isn't it?" Her breath misted in the cold air. "You recognized me." "Yes." No hesitation, no attempt to soften it. 10 years ago, you helped someone in an alley behind a pawn shop on 5th Street. He was bleeding, cornered, probably wouldn't have made it out without intervention. Memory stirred, fragmented, distant. She'd been 17, walking home from her cashier job at a convenience store. She'd heard sounds of a fight, seen a young man on the ground being kicked by 2 others. She'd screamed, thrown her bag at them, called 911, The attackers had run. The victim had staggered away before police arrived. That was you. That was me. Garrett's voice carried something she hadn't heard before, vulnerability, almost. You saved my life that night, and I never forgot your face. So, Friday night, when James grabbed me, you were just… What? Repaying a debt? At first. A pause. Then I saw how terrified you were. Not just of James, of everything. The way you moved. The way you watched exits. The care you took to be invisible. I recognized someone running, someone hiding. Linda closed her eyes. From what? I don't know yet, but I will. Background noise on his end, a car door closing, an engine starting. Don't go to that meeting. It's a trap. Victor Kane wants leverage, and you're it. Stay inside the bar. Stay visible. Stay around people. I'm 10 minutes away. Who's Victor Kane? Someone who thinks he can use you to hurt me. He's wrong. The engine noise grew louder. Linda, I need you to trust me for the next hour. Can you do that? She should say no. Should run. Disappear again. Start over somewhere. Victor Kane and Garrett Naranjo and Daniel Cortez couldn't find her. But she was tired of running. Tired of being alone. Tired of pretending she could survive this by herself. Okay, she whispered. Good. Go inside. I'm coming. The line went dead. Linda turned toward the bar's back entrance and found 3 men blocking her path. They weren't Garrett's men, wrong energy, wrong precision. These men moved with the casual threat of people used to getting what they wanted through intimidation. The one in front was massive, 6'5" easy, with a shaved head and neck tattoos crawling up from his collar. Linda Anderson. He smiled, revealing a gold tooth. Or should we use your real name? Mr. Kane's been looking forward to meeting you. Her phone was still in her hand. She hit the callback button blindly, praying Garrett would understand. I'm not going anywhere with you. That's cute. The big man stepped forward. But you don't really have a choice, sweetheart. See, you're coming with us whether you walk or we carry you. And honestly, after the trouble you've caused, I'm hoping you make this difficult. Linda ran. Not toward the street, they'd expect that. She bolted deeper into the alley, toward the fire escape she'd memorized during her first shift. Her server's shoes slipped on wet pavement. Her phone clutched in one fist, their footsteps thundering behind her. She hit the fire escape ladder at full speed, grabbed the lowest rung, pulled herself up. A hand closed around her ankle and yanked. Linda crashed down onto concrete, her phone skittering away into darkness. Pain exploded through her shoulder, her hip, her still healing forehead. The big man loomed over her, no longer smiling. Told you I was hoping for difficult. He reached down to grab her, and a black SUV screamed into the alley entrance, headlights flooding the narrow space with harsh white light. The vehicle didn't slow. It accelerated. The 3 men scattered. Linda rolled against the wall as the SUV rocketed past her. So close she felt the heat from the engine. It slammed sideways, blocking the alley completely, and Garrett emerged from the driver's side with a gun in his hand. Not pointed, not threatening, just present. Leave, he said quietly. The big man straightened, his hand moving toward his waistband. Mr. Kane said. Garrett shot him in the thigh. The suppressed gunshot was almost quiet. A sharp crack swallowed by the city's ambient noise. The big man went down screaming, clutching his leg as blood poured between his fingers. Garrett's aim shifted to the other 2 men. I said leave. Take him with you. And tell Victor that if he sends anyone near her again, I won't aim for the leg. They dragged their wounded companion toward the alley's far exit, stumbling over themselves in their haste to escape. Garrett waited until they disappeared, then lowered the gun and turned to Linda. She was still on the ground, shaking, her shoulder screaming, her breath coming in ragged gasps. He approached slowly, giving her time to see him, to process, to understand he wasn't a threat. Are you hurt? He crouched beside her, not touching, just present. My shoulder. I think when I fell. She tried to move it and hissed in pain. Don't. Stay still. He pulled out his phone, made a call. I need a medical team at the crossroads, back alley. Now. He ended the call and looked at her, his dark eyes searching her face. I'm taking you somewhere safe. Somewhere Victor can't reach. You can say no, but I need you to decide quickly. Linda looked at the blood on the concrete where the big man had fallen, looked at the gun now holstered at Garrett's side, looked at his face dangerous. Yes, but also concerned, protective. The same expression he'd worn Friday night when he'd handed her his handkerchief. The person you saved 10 years ago, she said softly. That's really why you helped me? At first, Garrett admitted. Now it's because Victor Kane just made you a target in a war you didn't ask for. And I don't leave people behind when it's my fault they're in danger. It's not your fault James grabbed me. No. But it's my fault Victor knows you matter to me. His voice dropped. And in my world, that's the same as painting a target on your back. Linda struggled to her feet, accepting the hand he offered. Her shoulder protested, but she could stand. Okay, she said. Take me somewhere safe. Garrett's expression shifted relief. Maybe. Or something deeper she couldn't name. I promise you, he said quietly. No one will touch you again. A black van pulled into the alley, silent and efficient. 2 men emerged, professionals, medics, moving with the precision of military training. Linda let them guide her into the van. Let Garrett climb in beside her. Let the city disappear outside tinted windows. And for the first time in 8 months, she stopped running. The safe house was a penthouse in a building Garrett owned through a shell corporation 3 layers deep. Linda sat on a leather sofa while a doctor, Garrett's doctor, who asked no questions and documented nothing, examined her shoulder. Dislocated, not broken. He reset it with professional efficiency that still made her vision white out for 3 seconds. Now it was wrapped, immobilized, throbbing with the kind of deep ache that promised days of pain pills and limited movement. The penthouse was furnished like a hotel suite, expensive but impersonal, the kind of place designed for temporary occupation. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, bulletproof glass reflecting the lights back in fractured patterns. 2 guards stood outside the door. A third monitored security feeds in an adjacent room. Linda had never felt more like a prisoner, and more protected simultaneously. Garrett sat across from her, his suit jacket removed, his shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows. The tattoo she'd only glimpsed before was fully visible now, intricate work that covered his left forearm in dark geometric patterns that suggested both artistry and affiliation. Tell me about Daniel Cortez, he said quietly. Linda's head snapped up. How do you... I've had people looking into your background since Friday night. Not because I didn't trust you, because I needed to understand why Victor Kane wanted you specifically. He leaned forward, his expression serious. Daniel Cortez, real estate developer, city council member, connected to half the legitimate power brokers in your old city. You were with him for 2 years. Left 8 months ago without warning, disappeared completely. He filed a missing persons report that got buried after 48 hours. Why? Because he owns half the police department, Linda said bitterly. And because he didn't want me found, he wanted me scared. Wanted me to know that running meant living in fear forever. What did he do to you? The question was gentle, but Linda felt it like a blade. She looked away, toward the windows, toward the city lights that promised anonymity and delivered nothing. At first, nothing. He was charming, attentive, generous. Successful older man interested in a grad student working 2 jobs to pay rent. It felt like a fairy tale. Her voice went flat. Then I moved in with him, and he started making decisions for me. What I wore, who I saw, where I went. Checking my phone, tracking my location, getting angry when I didn't text back immediately. Garrett's expression darkened, but he didn't interrupt. I tried to leave twice. Both times he found me within hours, convinced me it was love, that he was just worried, that I was overreacting. The 3rd time. She touched her shoulder unconsciously. He made it clear that leaving wasn't an option, that if I tried again, I'd disappear in ways that would look like an accident. So you disappeared anyway. I planned for 6 months, saved cash, created a new identity, left everything behind: my degree, my friends, my entire life. I thought if I was careful enough, if I went far enough. She laughed without humor. Turns out I walked right into another trap. Victor Kane somehow knew I'd run here, knew I'd need work. Set me up at the crossroads like I was a chess piece, because he knew I'd been looking for you. Linda met his eyes. You've been looking for me for 10 years? Not actively, but I never forgot you. And 6 months ago, someone sent me a photograph you, leaving a bus station 3 states from here. No message, no explanation, just the photo. Garrett's voice hardened. It was bait. Victor wanted me to know you existed, wanted me to wonder, wanted me curious enough to track you. Then he put you in a situation designed to make me reveal myself. James attacking me wasn't random. No. Victor probably encouraged it. Maybe even paid him to push you until you broke. He knew I'd intervene, knew it would confirm what he suspected, that you mattered to me. Garrett stood, paced to the windows. He's been trying to find leverage against me for 3 years. My organization disrupts his operations, cuts into his territory. He needed something to balance the scales. So he gave you me, A woman you saved a decade ago, now in danger because of your protection. Linda's voice was bitter. I'm leverage wrapped in sentiment. You were supposed to be. Garrett turned back to face her. But Victor made a mistake. He assumed I'd be conflicted, hesitant, willing to negotiate to keep you safe. He didn't consider that threatening you would just make me burn everything he's built to the ground. The certainty in his voice sent a chill down Linda's spine. This was the man who'd shot someone in the thigh without hesitation. The man whose reputation made grown criminals scatter. What about Daniel? She asked. If Victor found me, Daniel can too. Daniel Cortez is already here. The words landed like a physical blow. Linda's vision tunneled, her breath catching. What? He arrived in the city 2 days ago. Victor contacted him, told him where you were, offered him access in exchange for cooperation against me. Garrett's expression was granite. They're planning to move against both of us. Use you as bait to draw me out. Then eliminate us both. Victor gets rid of a competitor. Daniel gets revenge on the woman who embarrassed him. Linda stood, her injured shoulder protesting, panic rising like floodwater. Then I need to run. Now. If I leave, if I disappear again, they'll find you. Garrett crossed the room in 3 strides, stopping just inside her personal space. Linda, running is what they expect, what they're counting on. The moment you leave my protection, you're vulnerable. And staying makes me a target. You're already a target. His voice rose for the first time, frustration breaking through the control. You've been a target since Victor decided to use you. The only question is whether you face it alone or with someone who can actually protect you. You barely know me. I know you saved my life when you had no reason to. I know you've survived 8 months on your own in a city that eats people. I know you're terrified, but you still went back to work after James attacked you. His voice softened. I know you deserve better than being hunted by men who think they own you. Linda's eyes burned. Why do you care? Because no one helped me when I needed it. Except you. Garrett's expression carried weight she couldn't fully read. And because Victor Kane threatening you crossed a line I don't forgive. A phone rang. Not Linda's. Not Garrett's. One of the guards stepped into the room, his face tense. Sir, we have a problem. Daniel Cortez just walked into the Crossroads Tavern asking for Linda Anderson, and he's not alone. The Crossroads Tavern was nearly empty when Daniel Cortez walked through the door. It was after midnight, past last call. Just Tom and 2 regulars finishing their drinks while a bored bartender cleaned glasses. The kind of quiet that descended on bars in the dead hours between night and morning. Daniel looked exactly like Linda remembered, tall, well-dressed, his salt and pepper hair styled precisely, his smile warm and his eyes cold. He wore a charcoal suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent, moved with the casual confidence of a man who'd never been told no without consequences. 3 men followed him inside. Not obvious muscle, too well dressed for that, but the way they positioned themselves near exits and scanned the room marked them as professional security. Tom looked up from counting the register, his expression shifting from tired to wary. We're closed. I'm looking for someone. Daniel's voice was smooth, practiced, the kind of tone that sold real estate and won elections. Linda Anderson. I was told she works here. Not tonight. She called in. Tom's hand moved subtly toward the phone beneath the counter. And like I said, we're closed. I'm an old friend. It's important that I speak with her. Daniel pulled out his wallet, extracted several $100 bills, laid them on the bar. Perhaps you could provide her address? I'd hate to think she's avoiding me over a simple misunderstanding. Tom didn't touch the money. I don't give out employee information. You want to contact her? Leave a number, and I'll pass it along. Daniel's smile didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes, irritation, entitlement, the barely restrained anger of a man unused to resistance. I don't think you understand who I am. I don't care who you are. Tom straightened, his hand still near the phone. Leave a number or leave the bar. Your choice. One of Daniel's security team stepped forward, his jacket opening just enough to reveal a shoulder holster. The man asked politely. The front door opened again. Garrett Naranjo walked in alone, his suit jacket buttoned, his expression calm, his presence filling the space like a storm front. Behind him, through the windows, Linda could see 2 black SUVs parked across the street, filled with men who weren't even pretending to be subtle. Daniel turned, his smile faltering slightly as he recognized the threat. Garrett Naranjo. He recovered quickly, extending a hand that Garrett didn't take. I've heard a great deal about you. I believe we have a mutual interest in a certain young woman. Linda Anderson doesn't want to see you. Garrett's voice was quiet, controlled, the kind of quiet that made smart people shut up and listen. Leave the city. Tonight. Don't come back. Daniel's expression hardened. I don't take orders from criminals. Linda is not yours. Not anymore. Not ever again. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Tom backed slowly toward the kitchen. The regulars abandoned their drinks and headed for the door. Daniel's security team moved closer together, hands drifting toward weapons, reading the shift in dynamics. She's unstable, Daniel said, his voice taking on a reasonable, concerned tone. Mentally ill. Needs help that people like you can't provide. I'm just trying to… You're lying. Garrett took a step forward. Linda told me everything. The control, the threats, the reason she ran. So let me be very clear. If you come near her again, if you so much as speak her name in this city, I will end you. Daniel laughed sharp, performative. You can't threaten me. Do you have any idea who I know? The connections I have? One phone call and… I know exactly who you know. Garrett's voice remained level. Councilman Pierce, who takes bribes through his wife's consulting firm. Detective Morrison, who's buried 3 excessive force complaints. Judge Hernandez, who vacations at your lake house twice a year. I know all of them, Daniel. And I know things about them that would end careers with a single leaked email. Daniel's face flushed. You're bluffing. Victor Kane told you I'd be easy to leverage using Linda, that I'd negotiate, compromise, back down to keep her safe. Garrett's expression was absolutely certain. He was wrong. I don't negotiate with men who hurt women. I erase them. One of Daniel's security team reached for his gun. He didn't clear the holster before 3 of Garrett's men entered through the front door, weapons drawn, trained on Daniel's entire group with professional precision. The room froze. Tom's hand finally hit the silent alarm under the counter. Police would arrive in 5 minutes, maybe less. Garrett didn't seem concerned. You have 2 choices, he said to Daniel. Walk out now and never return. Or wait for the police, where I'll provide them with evidence of your harassment campaign against Linda, your abuse of power, and the weapons your security is carrying without permits in this jurisdiction. You can't. I own this city in ways you can't comprehend. Your connections are impressive in boardrooms. They mean nothing in the streets. Garrett's voice dropped. Leave. Now. While you still can. For a long moment, Daniel stood frozen, his face cycling through rage, humiliation, calculation. He was used to winning, used to getting what he wanted, used to Linda being powerless. Then he looked past Garrett, through the window, and saw Linda standing on the sidewalk beside one of the SUVs. She wasn't hiding, wasn't cowering. She stood straight despite her injured shoulder, her expression calm, meeting Daniel's eyes with something he'd never seen in her before. Defiance. This isn't over, Daniel said quietly. Yes, Garrett replied. It is. Daniel and his security team walked out, their footsteps echoing in the silent bar. Through the windows, Linda watched them climb into a luxury sedan and drive away into the pre-dawn darkness. She waited until they disappeared, then walked into the bar. Garrett turned to her, his expression shifting from dangerous to concerned in a heartbeat. You were supposed to stay in the car. I know. Linda's voice was steady. But I needed him to see me. Needed him to know I wasn't hiding anymore. Tom emerged from the kitchen, looking shaken. Someone want to explain what the hell just happened? James Jackson won't be coming back, Garrett said, pulling out his wallet and laying bills on the counter far more than the damage warranted. Neither will any of his associates. Linda works here as long as she wants, under whatever terms she wants. Anyone has a problem with that, they answer to me. Tom looked at the money, at Garrett, at Linda. Works for me. Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Garrett took Linda's uninjured hand. We need to go. They walked out together into the cold November morning, leaving the Crossroads Tavern behind the place where everything had started, where James had made his fatal mistake, where Linda had stopped running and started fighting back. In the SUV, as the city woke around them, Linda finally asked the question that had been building since the penthouse. What happens now? Garrett looked at her, his dark eyes serious. Now Victor Kane learns what happens when he threatens what's mine. Now Daniel Cortez understands that power has limits. Now we end this properly. With violence. With certainty. His hand tightened around hers. I promised you no one would hurt you again. I intend to keep that promise. Linda should have been terrified. Should have run from the man promising to start a war on her behalf. Instead, she felt something she hadn't felt in 2 years. Safe. Okay, she whispered. Then let's end it. Outside, the sun rose over a city that didn't know it was about to become a battlefield, and at the center of it all, A waitress who'd wanted a quiet life, a manager whose cruelty had sealed his fate, and a mafia boss who'd just decided that Linda Anderson was under his protection no matter who tried to take her back. The war hadn't started with James Jackson's attack, but it would end with Garrett Naranjo's promise. Thanks for sticking with this story till the end. If you enjoyed it, you're going to love the next one. It's packed with unexpected turns and heartfelt moments. Click the image on your screen to keep the journey going, and make sure to hit subscribe for more amazing stories. Drop a comment and rate this story from 1 to 10. I can't wait to see what you think.